Hey guys, I'm Brittany from Quarter Acre Roots, where we talk about growing a lot on a little bit of space. And today I am starting the very beginning phases of my 2026 garden planning. I've already started some seeds. I have some seed setups going in the basement. I've done a couple videos about some of my seed starts already, mostly just like onions, peppers, eggplants, but I'm starting to get the itch to really start planning everything that I'm going to be starting from seed this year, what I'm going to be not starting from seed and buying from transplants, and how I'm going to lay everything out. I've also got a couple new things coming in the mail this year. I have 3, I think, bare root currant plants coming, and then I also have 3 sea berry shrubs coming. So 1 male and 2 females. So I can't wait to get those in the ground and talk about those. But today we are focusing all about things I will not be growing this year. Now, when I say I won't be growing them, it may be a lie. I may grow like 1 or 2 of them, but I'm not going to be focusing on any of these because they are all high maintenance things that I do not want to be dealing with in my garden as my garden is getting bigger and bigger, because I'm all about having low maintenance, pest resistant, drought tolerant plants that don't take up a ton of my time every day, but provide a lot of great stuff for me. So this is gonna be a pretty vloggy style video of me talking through stuff, showing you guys clips of my garden from last year and talking through the 3 things that I'm probably not going to be focusing a lot of planting efforts on this year. So definitely use the chapter bookmarks down below in the description if you want to skip ahead in this otherwise pretty rambling video. So first up, squash. Now, I grew actually a lot of squash last year after taking a break from squash the previous year, because I will grow squash and then I will forget how stressful and time consuming it is to grow squash, and then I'll think, oh, I'll grow it again this year. It wasn't so bad, because I'm far enough removed from the trauma of growing squash that I think I can do it again. I'm not gonna make that mistake this year after last year. Last year, I grew some specific varieties of squash and zucchini that are supposed to be better for smaller space gardens. And one of those that I am going to be growing this year again is the smooth criminal hybrid squash. So that's like a vertical squash that grows up like a pole, so I can fit it in a smaller space, which is really great for my garden, not having to deal with like a large, sprawling squash plant. That one though, I did have a lot of problems with borers and squash bugs last year, so I will be growing that one undercover and hand pollinating it this year. I have a video all about how to hand pollinate squash and other related plants, because if you cover them to prevent insects from getting in, you are going to need to hand pollinate them because you don't have insects doing that pollination work for you. It's not super bad though, but it is a manual labor task that I don't want to be doing a ton of. So I'm probably only going to grow 1, maybe 2 succession planted of those smooth criminal hybrid squash plants this year. I'm not going to be growing any winter squash plants. So that includes acorn squash, butternut squash. I got a ton of butternut squash last year, and quite frankly, I made a ton of butternut squash soups to freeze for the winter, and we are kind of butternut squashed out at this point, and I'm not gonna grow any pumpkins. I'm not gonna grow any of those this year. And one of the reasons why I don't feel super bad about not growing those is because my cousin Jimmy, who I know I've mentioned on this channel before, he grows tons of winter squash, and his are incredibly prolific. I love the fact that they are shelf stable crops and they are pretty drought tolerant. So other than dealing with squash bugs and squash pests, you don't really have to do like a ton of stuff when you're growing winter squash. I am just not in the mood to deal with those pests this year. So what I'm gonna try and do is grow extra of something and then trade with my cousin, or just bum a couple of his, I think he grows butternut squash mostly, so that I can have a couple without having to grow it myself. And now, like squash bug larvae and squash pests, they can overwinter in your soil. So if you grow squash in one area of your garden, to rotate it to another area of your garden the following year to help prevent those pest infestations from coming like immediately back when the pests emerge. However, I have a smaller raised bed area where I'm growing things, so I can't really separate things that far away when I'm rotating my crops. I do try to rotate where I plant different things, just because I don't want the soil to get like completely depleted of a specific nutrient that one specific plant might like when I'm growing it in that same spot like year after year after year. I actually just ordered today it's called a squash tunnel, but people use it for all sorts of different vertical gardening things. I'm gonna put that in my backyard to help me maximize some of my vertical gardening space. This is what it looks like right here. It has awesome reviews, and a friend of mine whose handle I will throw up here on Instagram, she's awesome. I recently met her through working with Greenstock, and she's got lots of great tips and lots of projects focused focused on sustainability, but I saw the tunnel on her Instagram stories and immediately was like, what is that? I love how wide the bottom is. I love how tall it is because we're tall people, so it can be kind of annoying to walk through a tunnel like our cattle panel trellis where you're like ducking underneath of it. So I'm looking forward to getting that. I'm not really sure what I'm going to grow on it yet, but it probably will not be squash. Next up on things I'm not going to be growing is watermelon. And that is for similar reasons to why I'm not growing a lot of squash. They are closely related to squash, but they don't have the same issues with squash pests. However, I don't like seeded watermelon. I know it's like everyone ate seeded watermelon growing up, but now that all the stores have seedless watermelon and you can grow your own seedless watermelon, I'm kind of spoiled and like I just want to eat seedless watermelon, and like my daughter and my husband are the same way, so I don't want to grow something that takes up a lot of space that they are not going to eat. Now, in the past, I have grown seedless watermelon, but you have to make sure that you're growing it with a seeded variety because the pollen on the seedless watermelon is sterile. So even though it has male and female flowers, the bees cannot pollinate your female flowers from the male flowers on the seedless watermelon plant, again, because it's sterile, and that's how the watermelon is seedless when it grows. So you have to plant it with a seeded variety so that bees can take the pollen from those male flowers on the seeded variety to pollinate the female flowers on the seedless variety. Now, when I start hearing that, I start hearing multiple watermelon plants, I start hearing a lot of space. That said, I did mention this new tunnel I'm getting. If I can't put it where I'm kind of thinking about putting it and growing like cucumbers and beans and stuff on it, I may choose to put it in a new spot in the yard and this year put like one seeded variety of watermelon on it and one seedless variety. See, I'm already telling you guys these are things I don't want to grow because they're high maintenance and you have to hand pollinate them and they take up a lot of space, but I'm already trying to rationalize ways that I can grow them because we do love watermelon. But that is my backup plan for this new squash tunnel that I'm getting, and I will only do that also if my mom has extra plants too. Last year, she got seedless watermelon starts and we split them, and then I went through the whole process of like hand pollinating my seedless watermelon plant because I accidentally stepped on my seeded variety early in the season and it died and I couldn't find another one elsewhere. So I was like getting male flowers from her seeded plants and going across the street to our neighbor's house who was growing watermelon to get pollen from their plants, which again was just insane and very time consuming, and I don't want to be doing that again. So if I can't get my watermelon situation worked out, I'm not going to be growing that again. It takes too much space. And the last thing that is on my almost certainly definitely I am not going to be growing it this year is a cabbage. Now that is spring cabbage. I may grow fall cabbage, but I'm not going to be doing cabbage in the spring. I am a little sour on cabbage right now because although I love cabbage, I did not have a lot of luck last fall with my cabbages, so I'm just like a little on cabbages at this point. They also do take up a little bit of space, not as much as like a sprawling plant would, but they take up a lot of real estate, especially if you're growing like those larger heads of cabbage. And my mom is like a pro at growing cabbage. Her cabbages are always amazing. She does not seem to have the types of pest pressure that I have. Like I feel like my cabbages have to be covered because they're always just getting eaten alive by everything. So hopefully I can barter with her with something and get a head of cabbage from her because she has some really lovely cabbage plants every year. So a lot of those things have like similar themes with them. They're either super vulnerable to pests and I don't want to be dealing with that, or they take up a lot of space and they need like plants to be planted along with them for proper pollination. So they just aren't the best things to be growing in a super small space. I've already started seeds for lots of peppers and eggplants. I'm going to be focusing a lot on those this year because I find that they preserve really well and we eat a lot of them. And the number one thing you need to be doing in any garden really, but especially in a smaller space garden, is growing things that you will eat. I will not make the mistake of growing okra again because even though it grows great in our hot summers here, and I actually think it's like a really pretty plant with pretty hibiscus-like flowers and like a nice stature in the garden, none of us really like okra. So I'm not gonna grow it again because then it just becomes another thing that I have to water and monitor and harvest from and cut down at the end of the season. And I need to just continue reminding myself that just because I get a free seed does not mean that I need to plant it in my garden. Other things I'm going to be focusing on this year, I planted a lot of garlic last fall, so those I'll probably be harvesting around like the June time frame. I'm gonna grow a lot of tomatoes this year, a lot of cucumbers, a lot of green beans, peppers, lots of hot peppers this year. In fact, I'm very, very excited because one of my friends gave me a Carolina Reaper pepper last year and I saved all of the seeds from it, and every single one of those seeds has germinated. So I'm gonna have a lot of Carolina Reaper pepper plants. I'm gonna have long cayenne pepper plants, lots of stuff to make homemade spices, which I already am feeling like I wanna do that for one of my Christmas gifts this year, is make homemade spice mixes for people. So this year, if I can get some stuff from the garden over the summer that I can preserve to give for Christmas presents, I definitely wanna be doing that as well. And then of course, I have a ton of onion starts. I did a variety this year that's supposed to get very big and is supposed to hold in storage for a long time. So our garlic kept in the basement for a long time this winter, which is great because I didn't have to do really anything to it except for put it in our cold, dark basement. And I'm hoping for the same for our onions this year. I know onions are a little bit more of a high maintenance crop because of the pests, so I'm going to be growing a lot of them under cover. So that's one of the things that I'm going to be putting some insect netting over, as well as my eggplants, because last year my eggplants were super high maintenance for me. I had tons of problems with flea beetles and other problems that they were just like completely demolishing my eggplants. I got a decent early crop, but then the plants were just like obliterated. And even with treating them, they would just come right back. They were relentless. So this year I'm going to be growing them from the start under cover. So as with everything in gardening, I am learning more and more about what works for us, what works for my space, and what we like to do every year in the garden. And that's something that you should take as a lesson from this. Nothing is ever going to be perfect. You are going to figure out what's worth your time and what's not worth your time. So this is just the beginning of my garden planning for the year. I'm going to actually put pen to paper in my little like garden journal here that I take a record of everything. I put all my plants in here. I put where I had things last year, but at this point, it's just like kind of noodling around in my brain, the very beginnings of my planning process and the other seeds I may need to get started here indoors soon, because this Sunday, we are officially 9 weeks from our last frost date. So we are getting into tomato starting territory. I just need to remind myself to keep it low key and to only plant things that are going to bring us joy this year and not a lot of squash, because I'm not going to be battling squash bugs this year. Until my next video, happy planting.